what is it that the very first believers clung to from the very beginning? What is it that they pledged their allegiance to, and in many cases, even gave their lives for? The idea that we're going to tackle today is the very first line. I believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. We see this at the very beginning of Scripture, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, the first words of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Y'all, this is intelligent design. This communicates right off the bat that there is a being, a person who created everything that we experience as people, that created this world in which we live. That is good Bible right there. You need to see the stuff that Jesus affirmed, the stuff that Jesus brings to the surface often exists right in the middle of our web of belief. If it just happened, it has no meaning. It has not really any purpose. But if somebody made it, then it has meaning. It has purpose. Maybe you've heard this before. Science tells us how things work. Theology tells us why things work. Science can't discover why something does what it does. Theology gives those answers. What science does is it helps us understand how things work. And I believe that science and theology work hand in hand. I believe that they go together and they point towards an intelligent design. When it comes to him creating heaven and earth, it's not just that he created the sky and the land and the waters and the animals and the fish and the birds and all those kind of things, but also that he created you and me, and he created us differently than he created everything else. If you fast forward in Genesis chapter 1, you see in verse 27, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. We did not just come about. We are not by chance. There is a reason for our design and for our makeup. God made us in his image. And again, Jesus affirms this, Mark chapter 10, verse 6. But at the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. Jesus requotes this line, and he talks about marriage and the meaning of marriage in the context of this. We are made in the image of God, which means we are patterned after a person for a purpose. That's what it means to be made in the image of God, that we actually were designed with something else in mind, and that other thing that God had in mind was himself. We are not just a random assortment of cells. We are not just happenstance, but we are actually patterned after something else, and that's different than every other thing in creation. Trees were not made this way. Dogs were not made this way. The ocean was not made this way. The stars were not made this way. We were made in the image of God, and because of that, we stand apart from all of creation because we are intended to reflect God to his created world. We're called to be representatives of this Father who created heaven and earth to the world around us. We can't look at our lives as we're made in the image of God and just say, let's just kind of figure it out. Just do what feels right. Do what seems good to me. This seems good now and this seems good later, and I feel I'm in this mood today and in this mood tomorrow. Like, we don't get to determine who we are and why we exist. That's been predetermined for us because we believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, in you, in me, in us. Initially, chaos existed, okay? Just in the natural world, there's chaos. And as you follow the creation story, what it communicates is a loving Father created all of this, and he created it to have order. And so he made order out of chaos. There's a lot of different things you can believe about what Genesis chapter 1 is trying to tell us about how the world came into being. But at its core, the headline of this story is that God created it by moving chaos into order. That's ultimately what we're doing here. And then you fast forward to Genesis chapter 3 and you see the dragon or the serpent come on the scene and try and convince Adam and Eve, and he does a good job of this, convince Adam and Eve to determine their own definition of good and evil. I believe in God the Father Almighty. How would a father respond See, what the Apostle Creed tells us is this world and our bodies weren't made by the universe. They weren't made by chance. They weren't made by some impersonal deity who kind of put this thing into motion and stepped back and is now watching it. What Scripture tells us is that this world in which we live and this body in which we live was made by a loving and good and kind and patient Father.